Welcome to the Let's Chew podcast presented by Gulfood, the largest annual F&B sourcing event in the world. I'm your host, Juwaria Hirsi, bringing you compelling stories and insights to a wide range of topics in the food and drinks industry, from farming, behind the scenes, to the culinary world, and to foods we simply love to chew on. In this podcast series, we speak to people, brands, and businesses across the food and drinks spectrum to find out more about why they do what they do and how, in their own way, they're championing change and shifting the future of food and drink. Trust me, there's so much more, so listen to the Let's Chew podcast on our website, gulfood.com, and subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates in food. Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Chew podcast. As always, I'm your host, Juwaria Hirsi, and today we have an exciting guest, Mary Anne de Haan, the visionary supplying the UAE's top restaurants with her vibrant blooms. So whether you have dined at Tresind Studio, Nobu, Hakkasan, or Ossiano, chances are you have tasted Mary Anne's flowers. So Mary Anne is now the region's leading name in edible flowers and leading Mary Anne's fresh produce, growing sustainable microgreens and edible flowers and herbs in the UAE desert. So join us as we explore her story and the challenges she might have faced cultivating her farm and supplying the UAE's most renowned restaurants with her colorful blooms. Welcome to the Let's Chew podcast, Mary Anne. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's exciting.
How's your day been?
It's been pretty good, thanks.
Okay, perfect. So what I like to do on the podcast is to get to know more about why you do what you do and your journey. So if you can just take us back to the beginning of your journey and what inspired you to start Mary Anne's Fresh Produce, and how did you transition from the corporate life to now the UAE's leading name in edible flowers?
Thank you for that compliment. So I've always had a love for growing things and nature, etc. Like my mom just showed me a postcard she had sent my uncle when I was 10, saying, "Oh, that afternoon we were going on a nature tour to learn about all the medicinal and edible plants in the forest, because that's what I wanted to do, basically."
Oh, wow.
So there's always been that interest, and I have great memories of, we had a little orchard where, my dad would have also a vegetable patch and grow pumpkins and all kinds of stuff. So that love was always there, but more of a hobby, I guess. And I didn't necessarily see a career for myself in the agricultural world. Yeah. Because I'm from the Netherlands and there's a big ag industry there, but it's usually big farms or family farms, or it's very corporate, very big.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens there. Yeah. So I thought, okay, that's interesting, but not necessarily my career. I didn't see how to make a career out of that. But
Okay.
And then did one school and went to uni for industrial engineering, etc. But this love for food, yeah, and plants, it was always there, and it was always an interest and something I always followed. And sustainability, I was really a passion, like, what can we do to make the world slightly better, right? Instead of detrimental. And then we moved here in 2014, so I followed my husband and first found a job, more as an account manager for a company, because there's many things I love doing. So that was one of the things I loved.
One of the things.
But it was like coming here and then coming from a country where a lot is produced locally versus here, and you see everything is imported.
True.
And you do realize, wow, it is a very challenging climate here. It is not that easy, but there must be something that can be done. And I was just following the industry, and I got to visit a few farms in Egypt when I was there for a wedding, which is not the same climate here, but more towards what we have here. And there were some amazing things going on. And then as I learned about indoor farming, hydroponics, aquaponics, even organic farming in the desert, I'm like, this is amazing. There's still so much that we can do here in the UAE. Let me see if I can maybe join a project or transition into that world here, because I believe there's still a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
But to do it in a way where we prioritize sustainability, because for me, agriculture is really where like energy, water usage, like resource usage, health, taking care of our planet, it all comes together in how we produce our food, right?
True.
So how can we use agriculture as a force for good, basically? And there were a few projects starting up, but it wasn't necessarily themed towards that as much as I would like, or I didn't feel maybe I, with my skill set, could necessarily make a contribution. So I thought, you know what? There's still so much. Let me see if I can start something myself. And that's how I started talking to chefs and learning more. And about, where is the industry at this point here in the UAE? What are the things that are relevant for this context, etc. And through these conversations, said, okay, what can I do as a small farmer? Because some of the things, like tomato farming, you need a huge scale. So you need many, many, many millions to even get started in that industry. Right. So what can I do as a local small farmer? And we talked about herbs and basils and lettuces, and then things like edible flowers and microgreens. I was asking chefs, is this something you use or would be interested in? And they said, yeah, very much, because it's very hard to get here, because A, nobody's really doing this locally, and B, it's a very delicate product. So half the time, by the time you harvest a flower and you bring it from France or the Netherlands or wherever, by the time it's here, and maybe it's set on the tarmac in the heat for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and it's gone. And aside from that, it's just something very beautiful to grow. And so that's sort of how I fell upon that. Something I said, okay, this is something where I can make a difference and something I can do as a small farmer, and I can help these chefs. There's bringing them something they can't find right now. And there's still a lot of room for innovation and creativity within that space. So that's really how the journey
did you
started.
Start with just the flowers, or how did you?
Flowers and microgreens. Yeah, that's really where we started, right from the beginning. Yeah. And then we started with microgreens, a few varieties, and flowers, I think. And then beginning it was maybe 2 or 3 varieties or 4, and now we're, I believe, nearly 20 and more microgreens. And it's really the flowers that we are known for and hone in. And of course, make me the happiest.
Yeah. So just tell me a little bit more about the fresh produce as a whole. Like, how is it right now? How is it going?
The company?
Yeah, as a whole.
So now, so when we started, it was really, like I said, just me. So we are completely privately owned and have been from the beginning, and have really done it as a bootstrapped it all, basically. So from the beginning, it was like me literally figuring everything out, finding a property and building racks and doing the electrical wiring and learning about all the agricultural practices, talking to the chefs, doing the deliveries, etc. And then as we grew bit by bit, as our resources grew, every time everything would go back into the business so we could improve a little bit more, bring in somebody to help grow. And now we are we're a team of 15, and we work with, I think it's over 80 restaurants, if not more now, across by many of the Michelin starred ones, and they were there for the journey. They made this possible for us as well.
You've been speaking to them. Yeah, that's amazing. It's really impressive that you've managed to create a successful farm for edible flowers and the microgreens without prior officially agricultural experiences. Mm-hmm. So what would you say were some of the key challenges that you faced when starting out, and how did you overcome them?
Okay. So I think there's a multitude, different challenges. The first, of course, is learning about agriculture in a more commercial setting. Sure. Because there's one thing doing it in your garden, but it's different when you have to do it in a commercial setting, in the sense that you have to make sure you have continuous production for your chefs. That not only do you produce it, do you get it there in good condition, that you are complying with all the standards that are there, etc. So learning about all of these things, of course, is the technical knowledge, which is very fascinating, the science behind growing. Then the other thing is, I think, like I said, agriculture as an industry is still very much developing in the UAE. And it's amazing, in the 6 years I've been doing this, how much development I've already seen. But what that meant, especially like for the organic, more sustainable growing, in terms of resource availability, it was very limited. Still is a bit more limited, but it's gotten a lot better. So think of things like beneficial insects. It's something we wanted to use from the beginning, but there was no supplier.
Oh, here.
Yeah, here. Or, there's producers abroad, but nobody bringing it into the country with the right certification, etc. Whereas now there is. So it took us like years of searching, and then we found something. Same for certain, you might read about a specific microorganism.
Yeah.
That you can introduce into the system that helps suppress fungus and increases soil fertility, but it wasn't available here. Now, as the industry grows, more and more of these things are available in the market. So I think the fact that sustainable agriculture as a whole, as a sector, was limited but growing. So that was definitely a challenge to overcome, and where we still sometimes are like, oh, we'd love to do that, but it's difficult to access it. Yeah. But it's already
an opportunity at the same time. Yeah,
it is, and a major difference from 6 years ago till now, and I foresee a lot of growth in that area.
Yeah. And speaking of the sustainability, as you know, the farm to fork movements are becoming increasingly important in the culinary world, especially. Could you tell us more about your sustainable farming methods and how they set Mary Anne's fresh produce apart from the other options in the region?
So our aim at Mary Anne's Fresh Produce, the whole reason I set it up, is really to use the farm or the way we grow to contribute to a more equitable and sustainable world by pushing our agricultural practices to sort of address climate change, pollution, and resource usage. Yeah. Because for me, these three are sort of the main challenges facing our environment today, together with biodiversity loss, which is in effect a result of the former three. So each of these three is interrelated and has a lot of sub-issues to it. So, climate change is mostly driven by excess CO2 in the air. Then we have like pollution. You can think of plastic pollution, nitrate pollution, pesticide pollution, and then resource usage is how do we use scarce resources like water, arable land, energy, or anything, lithium, any limited resource, basically. So our aim is really to look at farming and our business as a whole in light of these three issues. How are we contributing negatively or positively to each of these things? Okay. So things you can think of in farming, for example, for climate change. Well, first of all, we're closer to the client, to our customers or the chefs we work with, so we're reducing food miles. But also we're growing plants, so through that capturing carbon from the air, right? But instead of sending like our waste to landfill, we compost on site so that we capture that carbon and turn it into a fertile soil, instead of sending it to a landfill where it rots and then releases it back into. Okay. And working on increasing the organic matter in our soil for our outdoor farming part, again, to capture carbon in the soil. That's just one example. Yeah. Then under pollution, you can think of how we do our packaging or, our waste management, where we segregate everything. We first try to minimize waste, of course, but also think like, what can we send for recycling? What do we compost on site again? Or in terms of like not using any chemical pesticides, because that contributes to a lot of chemical pollution in the environment and biodiversity loss. Yes. So, and then resource usage. So our indoor farm helps a lot in terms of water, which is a very scarce resource here. So water usage. And also per square meter of land, we are producing a lot, but energy usage is a bit higher. Whereas outside, we also look at, how can we optimize water usage through precision irrigation, etc. But it's still always going to be a bit more than indoors. But for some varieties, they are suited to this climate. And energy usage would be higher indoors because they would need quite a lot of space and light. So it makes more sense to grow them outdoors. So for us, I think it's a continuous process. And I think in sustainability, we don't have all the answers yet. Yes. But we are constantly it really is our aim to constantly be pushing ourselves. Like, how can we do it better? Really staying up to date. What are the latest insights? Doing our own measurements and evaluating and comparing and keeping up to date. So it really is our ethos. And yeah, you see it in all the little different practices across the farm, be it in the actual growing of things or how we run the business as a whole.
And I think it's beautiful because the top restaurants that you are collaborating with, they've been with you from the start, so they know your story and they know how much you're putting into your sustainable practices. So in terms of the edible flowers, not only is it enhancing the visual appeal of the dishes, but also it contributes to the flavor. Mm-hmm. Can you share some interesting examples of how Dubai's top chefs use your flowers to elevate their culinary creations and what impact it has had on their menus?
Well, they are always the best to answer this question, I'm sure.
I'm sure, but I want to see your perspective.
Yeah, exactly. For us, of course, we are facilitating the chef's creativity, and these are really the ones that make our products shine in their creations. Yeah. But one of the examples I could think of is Chef Himanshu at Tresind Studio has had this dish on his menu for quite a long time now. It's really one of his signatures, and it's a pepper, and he uses our gem marigold on top. Okay. These bright yellow flowers, but they also have like a citrusy herbal flavor that really amplifies and mixes beautifully with the other flavors of the dish.
Oh, that's delicious.
It's like so beautiful because it's like a bed of flowers on top, but then the flavor, you really taste the flower so well when you eat it, and how it balances so beautifully with the rest of the dish. So like that, and I know Avatar, there's a nasturtium. So nasturtium flower has a lot of initial sweetness and then pepper spice at the end. So again, that flower really adds a lot of flavor, and not only color because it's very bright, but a lot of flavor to their dish. And there's loads of examples everywhere across menus from all of these fantastic chefs and how they use these ingredients within their dishes.
So what would you advise other entrepreneurs who are interested in starting a sustainable business? What would your advice be?
A variety. I think for any business is don't give up.
Yes.
Know what you want to contribute, and know what value you are trying to add to the world. Who are your customers, and how are you adding value to them? And also, like, maybe it is through energy saving practices. So how are you contributing to the world, but also how are you helping the people you are working with, basically. So I think it's really important that you know your value add, basically. Okay. And then, I think in general, I think that's the challenge for any new business owner is, learning how to run a business. So going from one person where you're doing everything, and it's more about the technical knowledge, to becoming more of a team leader and working on your business instead of...
What would you say is the most difficult thing to be doing or farming business? Like, what's the most difficult
part of a farm?
Part of a sustainable farm?
Okay, so just sustainable business in general, or
just a farm from your point of view? Yeah. Is it the weather, or what would you say?
I think it's very hard to say. Farm, obviously you need to have a love for what you're doing. I mean, that's for me not even a question. If you don't actually love what you're doing, because you have to be very patient and passionate. It takes a long time to learn and optimize, and there's always more to learn. The climate is definitely challenging, but then again, it also presents opportunities to push novel ideas, try new things, etc. So for me, I think it's not just the farming, but it's also finding the right people that support the same vision, making sure you all, as you grow, you make sure everybody embraces that same ethos of sustainability and thinks in the same direction. And everybody starts contributing to that same idea, that same vision of how do we make the farm more sustainable as we go along, and work with our customers to support them as well on their journey.
Okay. And so how do you see the edible flowers industry growing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I still have a huge wish list of things I want to grow.
Okay.
So, I think there's still a lot of room for innovation and creativity and new things we can bring to chefs, etc. And look, the Dubai or UAE food scene is really going through a renaissance. Like, it's growing so much. There's so much creativity here. There's, the rate of development is amazing, and I foresee that to continue. So I think for edible flowers is going to be a part of that journey, or specialty produce, be it, adding more colors or flavors or sort of more paints to their paintbrush, basically. Okay. So that's,
Okay. So see, I have no clue about the edible and flower industry. Yeah. So what makes an edible flower different than a regular flower for listeners who are just like me who have no clue?
Okay, that's a very good question.
Because I can't just go to a farm and pick a flower and eat it.
Because sometimes when you're in it, you don't realize. Yeah. So there's a few things. First, it is about the actual variety of the flower. So inherently, genetically, are they edible, safe to eat? So you have to know the variety. Whereas some flowers can actually also be very poisonous. So it's good to know which variety. And then secondly is, how are they grown? Because, the variety might be edible when you see it on the side of the road, but it could be full of pesticides, or a dog has peed over it, or who knows. So for us, it's also very much about, producing them in a very clean, controlled way. So we know they are free of any contamination or any pesticides, etc., that they are fit for human consumption. So those are the two elements, I think, is what makes a flower edible. But if you want to grow in your garden and you know how you've grown them, then if you have the right varieties.
And how long does it usually take to grow?
You have to be... for the flowers, most of them from like seed to first flower is about 3 months, I would say.
Okay.
And it depends on the varieties. Most is around that, some a little quicker, some longer. But that sort of gives you an indication.
And how long is their lifeline?
It really depends. And it also depends how you take care of them. Okay. So I think like our violas, some of our plants, because we really pamper them, we keep them up to a year in our indoor farm. Whereas some, like inherently their life cycle is shorter. It's 4 months, 5 months, of which 3 months they're growing, then they give flowers for a short period. Yeah. And then they die off. Yeah.
Oh, a year.
That's for the really cool. So most of them are shorter. Okay. But again, it is like the more we can control the environment, give them the optimum environment to thrive in, the longer we can stretch their life.
Oh, amazing. So looking ahead, you mentioned you have dreams of expansion, and you have a checklist of things that you want to grow. So what are your future plans for Mary Anne's Fresh Produce, and how do you see the farm evolving in the coming years to meet the growing demand for locally sourced produce in Dubai and beyond?
So we've been very lucky that we've been able to grow like organically, basically from start till now, and we hope to continue that journey. It's really because of these chefs going on this journey with us, recommending us to other chefs, moving around to a new restaurant and taking us with them as a supplier. And we hope to continue that journey as the industry here evolves and grows. And using that growth basically to, like I said, add more varieties, be able to deliver a wider array of specialty products and work with them as, interest changes to new varieties, and really keep pushing ourselves in terms of sustainability. Okay, we are here now. What can we do even better? How can we sequester more carbon into our soils? How can we reduce our waste even further? My dream is really for us to become like a net positive contributor in each of these fields.
Okay.
So that would be the ultimate dream.
Perfect. Just one last question. What is your favorite thing to grow on the farm? And does any flower have better taste than the other?
Ooh, it's hard to say like a favorite, because like with the green, I love coming in, and then as you walk around, you get these different smells. Like one is more floral, and then you get more citrusy, and another one smells like honey. So it's like that whole combination that makes it so beautiful and colorful.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely some have better taste than others.
Okay.
Like viola, I love because of its versatility and its beautiful colors. But in terms of flavor, it doesn't add that much. It's very mild, which also makes it very versatile. And then like sweet alyssum, I love, like the smell is amazing. Like it's like honey. It's like you're inhaling honey. But then you taste it and it's mustards. It's so surprising.
Mustard.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, but I think like one I really like is slightly underrated. Maybe it's like these, we call it a purple bean. It is a bean plant, and it gives these purple flowers, and they almost look like little orchids.
Oh, cute.
And it's and the flavor is very delicate, like a bit like beans, but like very sweet bean flavor, very delicate. So yeah, I think I think that's an underrated one.
Okay. Delicious.
Yeah.
All right, then thank you so much for coming on the show, Mary Anne. It's really a pleasure to have you on the Let's Chew podcast. Do you have any last words or anything you want to plug, where they can find you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and
Absolutely.
great to be able to talk about what we do. And yeah, we're in Dubai, so any chef who wants to find us, you can find us at Mary Anne's Fresh Produce.
And where are you located?
We're on Dubai Lane Road there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning into another episode of the Let's Chew podcast. As always, please do leave us a review and let us know your thoughts on the episode. Until next time, bye for now.